name itself strikes terror into the hearts of filmmakers. This B-movie maniac cranked out as many films as possible, and the first one he directed was gruesomely poor. Part boring documentary, part what the hell did I just watch? Glen or Glenda has been called the worst film ever made, worse even than Wood's other failure feature. But I am brave. I am the gender hipster, and if a film features cross-dressing, gender-bending, or all-round gender fuckery, then by God I'm going to review it even if it kills me! The film, such as it is, has three main plots, which I'm going to dash through as quickly as possible because even thinking about Glen or Glenda gives me a headache. We start with a random scene of Bela Lugosi talking about some thing while lightning strikes.
The signs of the ages. Life has begun.
That scene will never be mentioned again.
A life is ended.
A transvestite commits suicide, leaving a note saying that he had to do so, seeing as he was sick of being arrested for walking outside in women's clothing. However, Ed Wood makes it obvious that the suicide is a frame-up and the transvestite was actually murdered by the radiator. The inspector on the case goes to see a psychiatrist, whose face looks like the Chinese embassy, in order to ask about transvestism. The guy with the gabled mouth decides to tell the tale of Glen. Glen, played by Ed Wood, is a transvestite. He goes around in public dressed in Angora sweaters and a really bad blonde wig. Why is it that the fake-looking blonde wig is always such a staple of bad drag? If Glen got himself a brown wig or something more understated, then maybe he'd look a little bit less crap. Yes, Ed Wood, two can play at that game. So Glen basically agonizes over whether or not he can tell his fiancée that he wants to wear her clothing.
I really hope not.
While the world's most annoying people complain off screen about whether planes and cars are natural or not, because obviously planes and cars are analogous to transvestites.
Once, not so very long ago, the people of the world were saying,
airplanes. Why, it's against the Creator's will. If the Creator wanted us to fly, he'd have given us wings.
but we fly. Maybe some of you may still remember an even sillier remark.
Automobiles? Bah. They scare the hosses. If the Creator had meant for us to roll around the countryside, we'd have been born with wheels.
And couldn't they afford more on-screen actors? Now they can't! Every now and again, the scientist shows up and says some more things that make no sense, while he fades in and out over other bits of footage, presumably because he's some kind of ever-present ghost which haunts Glen.
Hold the string! Hold the string!
And our favourite disembodied voices are called back to discuss sex reassignment surgery over some more unrelated stock footage.
Did you read about the guy that aims to a girl? Says he was perfectly normal, too.
How can a guy be normal and go and do a thing like that to himself?
Glen has a terrible dream sequence, which for some reason is mainly lesbian bondage softcore porn, as well as a whole bunch of people molesting him, and then we're back to the office with Inspector Roofmouth. Did I mention that Ed Wood was contractually obligated to make this movie to capitalize on the male-to-female sex change of Christine Jorgensen? Well, Ed himself seems to have forgotten it until the last minute. So now we'll have to shove in a subplot about a man who has a sex change. Alan was raised in a feminine manner, was an effeminate child, joined the army, suffered through the agonies of stock footage, note the random naked men who seem to think it's a good idea to stand around on the beach during an invasion, and then got a sex change and became Anne because it turned out that she had an intersex condition. Because apparently only people with intersex conditions have gender dysphoria. Glen, however, doesn't have gender dysphoria. Instead, he dislikes women's clothing. Fair enough. Apparently not. No, he's randomly cured of his transvestism, which came about because his evil jack chick devil father didn't love him enough.
Glen's father had no love for his son. His father wanted Glen to be a football hero or a baseball player so that he could brag to his cronies down at the corner saloon as his cronies bragged to him about their own sons.
And how is he to cure himself? Well, by transferring his desire for women's clothing onto his wife and making his wife reflect his feelings about Glenda, his sister and his mother, as well as herself. Ew, so then he's having sex with a reflection of his mother and sister? Why would you want that? That's far less healthy than going around with a wig and some panties on. I mean, who cares about this? This is awesome! It's certainly better than quasi-Oedipal desires for your own mother. Glen or Glenda attempts to explain transvestism, and it's not too far off the mark. However, the result is seriously marred by Ed Wood's terrible filmmaking, not to mention the incredibly bad acting of his girlfriend Dolores, who is playing Lady Gaga. I mean, Barbara.
We promised we'd never lie to each other. Are we gonna start now, just because we're engaged to be married?
It's just that...
You're a terrible actor! Bela Lugosi's role is inexplicable. The narrator repeats himself over and over and over and over again, and this film feels a heck of a lot longer than its short runtime of 110 minutes. Glen or Glenda presents the idea that men are transvestites because they just like women's clothing, because apparently it's more comfortable. I beg to differ. But then it completely ignores the conclusion by saying cross-dressing results from some kind of serious problem or feminization in their early life.
I'm a girl.
Glen is probably one of the better drawn characters in this movie, which isn't saying much.
That's the understatement of the year. Just how does one go about introducing your friends to your brother? When brother's wearing your best sweater and your skirt and makeup to boot.
Some people are just naturally gender hipsters. There isn't anything more to it. Gender is a spectrum. Some people fall more on one side, some people fall more on the other, and other people are right in the middle. Since Ed Wood himself was a cross-dresser, the film is pretty fair on them. However, it doesn't stop it from being a bad film generally, with an overuse of stock footage and enough repetition to make this feel like the 1950s equivalent of The Room. I'm not entirely sure what I was expecting, but whatever it was, I wasn't expecting it to be this painful.
Men's hats are so tight they cut off the blood flow to the head, thus cutting off the growth of hair. 7 out of 10 men wear a hat, so the advertisements say. 7 out of 10 men are bald.
I can barely even rate how much of a gender hipster Glen was, because we never really learn anything about his character, other than that he likes women's clothing. Yeah, so? Why, what on earth is that thing reviewing one of Ed Wood's movies? It's just unnatural, it is.
If God had wanted us to be on camera, he would have given us bodies.
Shut up! Just shut up! I'm tired of being subjected to Ed Wood's nightmares!
Bela Lugosi is dead. The bats have left the bell tower. The victims have been bled. Red velvet lines. The black box. Bela Lugosi is dead.